everybody, and welcome to this week's episode of the Ripple Effect Podcast. My name is Daniel. We're so glad that you are with us. In the studio on our far right, we have Rachel with us in the studio, and we're so glad she's here. And we also have our special guest today, Mr. John Bondy. Are you a Dr. John?
Yes.
This is Dr. John Bondy, and we're going to talk with him in a little bit and hear his story and ask him some questions, and we're so grateful that he's here with us. Before we do any of that, though, we want to give a quick shout out to all of our farmers out there who are grateful for the rain, I'm sure, but are also starting the process of harvest. And you know a little bit about harvest.
I'm working in it now.
You're working in it now. Mm-hmm. And we just want to say that we've been praying for you all, and we hope that this harvest season goes well for you. What we do in this podcast usually is we will do a recap of Sunday, and then we will give you the top 3 things that you need to know heading into this week, and then we have our spotlight. So let's get into that right now. This past Sunday, we had our all-in-one church service at the Christian College, and I've got to start out by apologizing. Because I told you guys last week that if the rain came, we were going to come back here to the church building. But we decided to go over to the college because we wanted to keep it an all-in-one service. So next time, I apologize. That's on me. Next time, we got to do a better job of thinking ahead and being ready. But the main reason we wanted to do an outdoor service is to have everybody together.
Right.
And we couldn't have done that here. Right. So thank you for being flexible, and I hope it was enjoyable for you. Rachel, what was the best part of Sunday for you? Did you
sleeping in an hour?
Hey, that's right. We didn't have to be there until later. We just did 10:45.
It was nice. I woke up and I was like, "What time is it? 8:30? What?"
I got plenty of time.
Yeah,
that's awesome.
Like 8:30 would have been we're walking out the door on a Sunday morning usually. So.
Usually. Yeah, that's good. John, how was your Sunday?
Wonderful. We covered another church that the pastor was gone on a trip. So,
well, John, tell us. Go ahead and tell a story real quick of what happened for you.
2 weeks ago, this pastor called us from a foreign country. His wife's from Moldova, and he'd gone over to Moldova to see the parents. And he called me on a Sunday morning, and he said, "Are you ready to preach this morning?" About 8:30 in the morning.
Like, are you going to be ready in like an hour to preach for me?
So I'm looking up my sleeves and running up and down the sidewalk. I was outdoors when he called and thought, okay, we'll sing a lot. Have people speak.
That's right. Yeah. Have other people share. Yeah,
that's right.
That's good.
Then he said he got his dates wrong, so it all worked out.
Okay. So you covered for him, though, this past Sunday.
Yeah, I did not get to go to the service. Yeah.
Yeah. Mm-hmm. Well, that's good. What'd you preach on? Do you remember?
Yes. What perfection is and is not in a Christian sense, that people try to be perfect out of fear and out of the wrong reasons and out of pride, and the Bible calls us to be perfect, but in loving God and doing it that way, and not being out of fear.
That's great.
Others, so
that's great.
Yeah.
Well, if you were part of the all-in-one service, I hope it was encouraging for you. If you missed it, you can watch that at tlcc.church. It's also on the Facebook page where you can see it was at the college, and it looked a little different. We had some different things happening that day, but we hope that it was encouraging for you. We will be back here at the church building this coming Sunday, normal service hours, and we'll be finishing up our series and that we've been in, our creation series, with Noah and the covenant that God made with Noah. And we're going to talk about covenants and what that looks like and what covenant applies to us today versus what applied to them. So it'll be a good Sunday, and we're looking forward to that.
And I'm back. I preached on Galatians 5, fruits of the Spirit. So that's what I had to think. I better say on Scripture. I did Galatians 5.
Galatians 5. Okay.
Yes.
All right, that's good.
Those things.
That's good. All right, well, let me give you the TLCC top 3 of the week, the things you need to know going into the week. Number 1 is next week, we are going to be out of the office. Every staff member is gone, John. Don't try to call me.
Okay.
We are, every year in the fall, we do a staff retreat.
To Colorado.
And this year, we're going to Arizona.
Oh.
There is a conference that used to be called the North American Christian Convention, and it changed and rebranded now as a leadership conference called Spire. And we've gone for the last 3-4 years. We missed, well, COVID was an online year, but we've gone since they since they changed it over. And so we take everybody. Dawn's coming with us. The whole staff is going. So we're going to be out of the office. We leave Monday, get back on Friday. So if you have something urgent, we'll have a phone number, a couple contact information of the elders you can contact. Most of you can reach us on our phones or through Facebook if there's an emergency, but the office will be closed. The second thing is Trunk or Treat is coming up for October 31st on Halloween. And there is two things that we always ask every year. If you can buy a bag of candy and donate it, that helps us out giving out candy. And also, if you want to be a part of that, you can decorate your car and have it in the Trunk or Treat whole show. So there's a sign-up sheet in the lobby if you'd like to sign up to have your car in the Trunk or Treat. It's always a fun time. This is probably one of our biggest events where non-church members are at our campus. Hundreds and hundreds of families that many of them don't go to church, definitely don't go to our church, are on our campus, and we get a chance to talk with them, encourage them, and interact with them.
And Christmas.
And Christmas.
That would be a big one.
That would be another big one.
Non-church.
That would be a big one. So if you can buy a bag of candy, we're starting to collect those now. And if you'd like to sign up your vehicle, that would be great. And the last one is the Right Now Media. We've talked about this periodically. The church pays for a subscription for our whole congregation to have access to a resource which is called Right Now Media. Lots of videos, Bible studies, all sorts of study material, things you can read, things you can watch. There's also videos for children as well. A Christian resource that is a great one to have. So if you have not gotten access to that, there is on our website, there's an orange button that says Right Now Media, and you just click on that and it'll take you to it, and you can get logged in and you have full access to that. So we want to highlight that because not everybody knows about it. So that's next week. We leave on Monday, so staff is out of the office. Trunk or Treat for October 31st. You can sign up for candy. You can also sign up for participating with your vehicle. And then Right Now Media. Those are your top
I even know about Right Now Media at my age.
I'm proud of you.
It's good stuff.
That is good stuff. There's lots of great materials there. Mm-hmm. All right. We have with us in the studio Dr. John Bondy. And many of you have met him. He's been around the church and dabbling around the church for the last, we have figured out it was about 5 years. It's about 5 years. Mm-hmm. And first he came just to explore and just to see what was going on. And then he just kind of stuck around. And we're pretty grateful that you're here. John, what I do with every new guest is I ask them to introduce themselves. You've got 60 seconds. If someone has never met you, never seen you before, who is Dr. John Bondy? What do you want them to know about you? You've got 60 seconds to introduce yourself. On your mark, get set, go.
I grew up in North Missouri right here. My wife is from here. That's why she knows people here at our church. Mm-hmm. And I was called into the ministry when I was about 11 years old, and I preached on a stump. And my dad often told me, as much as I like to talk, he said he hopes that I would go into the ministry. And so the Lord did pursue that. Mm-hmm. So we pastored several churches and then moved into the mission field later on in life and been in several countries. My wife is a saint, following me from country to country.
She is a saint.
So she's very good. And we became missionary professors. We were working at a university here in the USA, and I got an email one morning back many years ago now that said, could you come to a university and teach for us for 6 months? And I almost took that as a joke. I ran downstairs, told my wife as she left for the university for work that we're going to go to another country and teach. And I said I'd go do that and take her with us. Then we'd go together and we'd go for 6 months and teach. Well, we became full-time missionaries. I was a professor. I became a professor I did qualitative research. My wife's into quantitative research. And I taught a lot of educational courses, Christian education, anthropology, and those type of topics. And she dealt mostly with majors in English.
10 seconds.
And that's what we've done for her. And we've retired back here. This is her home farm.
Okay.
And we are farming. We are in harvest right now.
There you go. All right. So right now you are semi-retired. You dabble in farming. Mm-hmm. You are part of a lot of different ministries in Moberly.
Right.
And you have been a professor, you've been on the mission field. One of the things that I wanted to talk to you about was your time on the mission field. Which countries have you been in, and what capacity were you there? And was it always in the professor teaching role, or what types of things did you do?
It's basically always in the teaching role. When we first went to the foreign field, I didn't have my PhD yet, so we taught at the university. I did not teach graduate courses, taught undergrad courses. And I was the chaplain of an international congregation in which many people of different faiths would come to the congregation because they were in a country that they didn't speak English, so they came to our congregation. After I got my PhD, then we moved into Manila, Philippines, and taught at the seminary, preparing people to go back out and teach at their own Bible colleges in various countries around the world. 14 different countries we had there at our seminary, various denominations that we would teach. People would feel they'd be a veterinarian or they'd be a doctor or whatever, and they'd feel that second call to go back into the ministry older in life. They'd come back and do their master's thesis, and that's what we worked with.
Wow. That's awesome. So training a lot of different people to go back onto the mission field. You mentioned that email of being like, okay, we'll go do it for a little bit. Was there a part of you, God called you into ministry at a young age, but was there a part of you that was like, I don't know if I want to go away from the United States or on the mission field long term? And then what was it that kept you there? Other than, the large amounts of money that you earned because you were on the
Yes. That's why we're still working.
That's right. Yeah, absolutely. Yeah.
The element of human fear struck me. On our first trip to the foreign field, I think I sat on the plane and cried the whole time. It's a wonder they didn't land the plane in Singapore someplace and let me off, thinking, what did I get myself into? But as you follow the Lord, He somehow or other develops your faith and protects you and helps you through what you're going through. And so I think the basic element of fear became an element then of trust, where we just had to trust Him moment by moment and follow Him. And it was a time of growth, spiritual growth for us. I knew down in here that I was called. I knew that He wanted us to go, and I knew He wanted us to serve Him. And I argued with God. It'd take a while. There's divine coincidences. I better be careful here. My dad always said, son, there's no coincidences with God. But I'd look in my suit coat and it was made in Korea, or little things like that. Okay, Lord, yes, you're reminding me. And so with those divine coincidences, you know deep down that you've got to follow the Lord. But He takes your breath out when He does that. It takes your breath out. God, I can't do this. And so God's very patient when you argue with Him.
When you were younger, let's stay on this topic of trust here. When you were younger, did you ever imagine that your life would end up looking like it does now, where you've been so many different places and trained so many different types of people, different denominations that you've interacted with? I mean, did you imagine it would be like that? And then talk to us about trust, because I've met several people who's like, I don't know if I could do that. And a lot of it comes back to that worry or fear of what's ahead. And how do you trust in God, where sometimes you didn't know what your next meal was going to look like?
Right.
So do you imagine your life would look like that? And then talk to us a little bit about trusting God.
When I was younger, I never dreamed we would do what we did. And I never dreamed it would be possible. You couldn't have paid to done what we did. I was in clinicals in Kansas City with St. Luke's Hospital, just beginning my first month of doing a CPE program.
What's that?
And to work as a chaplain, medical chaplain. And I was pastoring a church in Kansas City. I was very happy. Owned our own home. Well, the bank and us owned our own home.
You was a partnership together.
A partnership, yeah. And those elements caused me not to want to leave. But the Lord kept assuring me that He would take care of us and take care of our family if we would follow Him. And as faith development develops in your life, gradually you develop a trust that you're hardly aware of. And I'm very humbled to be here today, because when you called me to talk about trust, I realized, being back in our own home country, that I take trust for granted, trusting God for granted. I can go out and hop in my truck, or go out and help in the harvest field, or go to a meeting here in town, or go to Walmart, and I'm not really trusting God. But in foreign countries, we would land at an airport, my wife and I, alone. And you don't know who's meeting you. You don't know the language. You don't even know where you're at when you land at that airport. It might be raining and dark. And once in a great while, there'd be a person sitting next to us on a plane or something. And however this might sound, that person would say, now, you need to go here, or you need to go there, or be careful about this. And then I would turn or get off the airport to try to meet this person and thank them, and the person is gone. Is that like an angel or not? I'm not sure, but God would always provide for us.
Those divine coincidences.
Those divine coincidences, thank you. But the trust element was constant. When you land at airports, you don't know if you're going to get bribed. There's times at train stations they'll make you wait. We stand out as foreign people, and you try to be gentle and kind. You try to be patient, and you try not to be nervous and shaky. You just have to be calm and collected. And I think God does that for us. So I think I'm far more aware when I served 24 hours a day, 7 days a week in a foreign culture. There's the stress of trying to fit that culture. It's a different culture than our culture. And so back here now, when you call me, it's like, oh, I'm not as thankful as I should be of God's protection, his guidance for me. It's not just protection, but how God works with us. It guides us. And here my spiritual heart maybe isn't quite as open to be in trust of him like it should be here. So it's you take it for granted.
Rich, I want to bring you in on this one because you've traveled and have a heart for missions. Your husband has. Have you ever experienced that where you're much more aware, trusting, attuned to what God is doing when you're in a place that's not home? And then have you ever had that thought of like back here, like I wish I could live in that kind of same mentality?
Kind of. Yeah. I've traveled a little bit, never long term anywhere, obviously, other than when I moved out here. And then, sorry. And there was a point where I lived here. I wasn't going back home on breaks. This was where I lived. That was hard. I didn't have family out here. I'm working to support myself. And you have some connections and you can speak the language and all that, but you're still
by yourself.
You're on your own. But then on the other hand, there are other things, Alec and I have talked about this quite a lot recently. We've had a lot of things happen in the last 6 months. And I would talk to him about it and I'd be like, you know what? I'm the most stressed I've been in 5 years, but I am so at peace with I just trust God.
Yeah.
I know that it'll be okay. Our cars will get fixed.
All those things.
The money will come in.
Yeah.
We'll have the money. We'll pay for it. We'll be okay. And even if it doesn't happen, we'll still be okay. And all the things, I'm not worried about it. But that's not as a radical of where's my next meal gonna come from. And I do think a lot of us take that for granted.
She brought up a very crucial mission topic. We would have mission trips come and see us and work, like building a church or packing blocks, doing mission trip work, 2-week people. But the people who come for 2 weeks live in a suitcase.
Yeah.
And it's exciting, and they're not part of the culture, and they're with people they know.
And they have a return ticket.
And they have a return ticket. But when you're there for years and years and years, you live there, you don't have a return ticket. You no longer go home. You no longer go that evening, close the lid on your suitcase and go home. It doesn't happen. Yeah. So that's what she's bringing up there.
And that mentality, sometimes we do get comfortable, like you said, when we come back home or when we're in a place where we've lived and we've been there for a long time. And I guess this is saying it crudely, but we sometimes act like we don't need to trust God every day because we know what we're doing. And you brought with you an illustration about trusting God. Do you want to share that with us? Yeah. Let's get to it. You got some fun stuff in here.
Hold that.
Oh, I do. Yeah.
This is a simple.
It's cute.
Simple little dealie. There's the lid if you want the lid.
I do want the lid.
And when you're trying to follow the Lord, you want, as a missionary, you want to be very
This is super
kind
cute,
and gracious.
Mm-hmm.
And this is a tea set that was probably given to my wife or something. And this is how they drink tea. We serve basically in Asia. The items are small. A cup of water is this size in a restaurant in Asia. Mm-hmm. And the pop cans, you're seeing some of the soft drink cans here in America getting slim and narrow, but they're like that there too. But when you drink tea, you have to hold it in a certain way there to be just culturally proper. And you get to... And then when you go over to China, there's a different way you have to do that. Mm-hmm. So the trust issue there again, you're wanting to serve people to be people-pleasing to them. So if you slurp it differently or something, that in that culture, it's not proper. You know, they notice those type of things.
It's going to be offensive, yeah.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
So that's one thing I want to share.
What's this?
This is a sample of what's called a kimchi pot. Kimchi is a food that's made in China and in Korea. And the big kimchi pots are
Big.
waist high. Mm-hmm. And they bury those in the ground. They have a very strong smell, very spicy, very hot to them. We had just arrived in the country the first day of our lives. I didn't know this stuff red was hot. And you sit on the floor to eat, and you use chopsticks. Mm-hmm. First time for chopsticks.
Did you ever get good at this?
Pretty good.
Okay.
Pretty good after all those years. And so they serve kimchi at every meal. If your home doesn't have kimchi, then you're being very rude. You always serve kimchi and rice to the people. But kimchi was made in pots. It's made out of cabbage, shrimp juice, and tons of red hot peppers that dry out on the trails wherever you walk. The peppers are drying in the fall. And it's called kimchi, so you always eat that kimchi. It has a strong flavor and strong smell to it. It's a healthy food. But we had this sample kimchi pot. And I'm talking about trusting, even down to the manner of food. You're being served food, and you don't know what it is. And we were taught, don't ask for 3 weeks what it is. But my first bite of kimchi, you don't get water with your meal. All of a sudden, I'm on fire. I'm sitting on the floor and I'm going backwards. And of course, the hosts are laughing there.
Sure.
So, yeah. So this is a sample of a kimchi pot.
So what would you say for you has been as you think back on trusting God and how He's brought you through? You talked about crying on the plane. You talk about moments where you wonder, God, is this what you want? If you could go back to tell your younger self that's getting asked to go on the mission field, you have your family. Is there any advice you would give your younger self and that might apply to some of us here who might have an idea of what God's leading us to, but we don't know what it's going to look like or what it's going to cost us?
I think it applies to every person. I think there's times to everyone when God calls us to maybe go next door and share a smile, and we don't want to. That's not our personality. Maybe we're an introvert and we don't want to go next door and share a smile, but we're being called to do that and it bothers us. So as far as going back as a younger person, I think God prepared me just through developing my personality, who I was, who He made me to be, to do this. I think it's a matter of being open spiritually is how we serve Him. I'm in the field of work now where I'm always asking people to serve in various ways in various committees. And you'll always get to people who say, no, I can't do this. Mm-hmm. Or I'm afraid to do this. And generally, I try to ask people who I know can do those things.
Sure.
As a pastor, we do those. You try to select somebody that you know probably could do it. But sometimes they have reasons that they don't tell you or they don't know. But sometimes it's a matter of not realizing that God will give us a lot of joy and a lot of grace and a lot of peace if we would take that breath and say, yes, Lord, I will do that. I'll try to do that, and He'll help us do it. So
that's great.
Yeah.
Well, we have about 8 to 10 minutes left here.
Okay, let me look at my notes.
I wanna ask you a question that might get us off the topic here. All right? Or did you have anything else you want to share?
I'm looking at some notes because a couple things I want to share with you. But go ahead.
Well, no, this will change the topic. So if you got something to finish up on this.
Well, okay, I'll share a couple things.
Go ahead.
In churches in Korea, this is for Daniel, you always take off your shoes before you go up to the platform.
Really? Mm-hmm. So I should preach with socks on?
No, there's house slippers at the bottom of every platform.
I should have my preaching slippers is what you're saying.
Preaching slippers.
Okay, I like it. That's a good idea.
And where do you think that might come from in the Bible?
Jesus washing the feet.
Take off your shoes because you're on holy ground.
Oh, holy
She got it.
ground.
Mhm.
Nice work, Rachel.
And in a church even this size right here, in the back foyer would be shoe racks. And every person takes off their shoes before they go in the sanctuary. And they sit on the floor. Everybody sits on the floor. And in the American Western world, the independent world we live in, our body space is a lot different too.
Yeah.
But in the Korean culture or the Asian culture, when you sit on the floor,
You get close.
you can get a lot more capacity in the building.
Well, technically, in that room, capacity-wise, we can fit, I think it's 714 people.
In chairs.
And well, you could do it in chairs, but not the chairs we have. But the fire code is 714, but people feel crowded when there's 300 in that room. And imagine 700 people in that room and how close you'd have to get to everybody.
Body space.
I know.
Body space. I actually have slept standing up.
Like a
When
camel.
you're in a subway, you are so packed tight, you just stand there and sleep. It's a lot more comfortable to sleep in Timberlake here during the service. But body space.
I can put him to sleep, John, with the best of them.
Today, I'll go into Walmart and I'm leaning over looking at something. I may not be bumping you, but I'm right here, and all of a sudden that person, excuse me!
Yeah, you're too
Because
close.
the Western culture maybe has a 3 foot or 5 foot body space.
Yeah.
And so those are things you bring back with you that you forget. So now I'm trying to
You're too close to people, John.
I'm trying to adapt to culture here now.
Yeah.
So
Oh, that's good.
Yeah.
That's good.
so you take off your shoes to go in every home. You eat on the floor, basically. So it's different. And to do those things, you're not aware of body mannerisms, culture mannerisms. And so God helps you to do that. And there again, you have to trust God to bring the right type of people and the right kind of friends to you. When you get in a taxi in the world's largest city, in Seoul, or Manila, or Beijing, you don't know that person. You don't know if he's going to drive you around for half a day and charge you, or pull you over and take your American money, or what. It's a matter of constant trust. You just don't know. But God's always been with us, and people have always been good, and usually they're God's people. When you're in His work, He will take care of it. So when we say yes to God, He does a lot of protection, a lot of guidance for us when we trust Him.
Yeah. Amen. You are someone with your past experience who has worked with people from all different denominations.
Most.
And you yourself come from a different background
here.
than Restoration Christian Church here. So one of the questions as we close, I was just curious about, because we work with the Ministry Alliance, you've like you said, you were part of a church that had all sorts of different backgrounds. What's something that you think people kind of ingrained in denominations we can get distracted by, and what's something that we can find common ground on?
When we were on a mission field, our common ground was orthodoxy. Everybody had an orthodox faith that you stuck with.
What do you mean by that?
The Trinity, God, the Scriptures, believing in the Bible as being the only Word of God. The top 10 orthodox issues that are critical to our faith: salvation in Jesus, baptism, all those type of things. That's what you would work with. You majored on the majors, and you did not minor on the minor issues, and it helped things along a lot. We on the mission field, I guess you might say we're in a foxhole together.
Yeah.
We all work together, from Mennonites across to Lutherans to Presbyterians. You work together, and it becomes a united front. It becomes a beautiful way to work. It works. We do not compromise our convictions that each person might have. Those are between us and God, but we work together in a united way.
Yeah. And so what's something that you think when we get over here where we all have our own little, not foxholes where we're together, but we kind of have our own trenches, is there something that you've noticed, on this side of things where we can kind of get distracted and maybe focus too much on that?
I think there's the Eastern culture and the Western culture, the Platonian culture. We're over here in the West, we're a very independent people. And that can almost hurt when we're trying to work together. In the East, in the Oriental culture or the Asian cultures, and even in the Jewish culture from Christ, it was a communal culture. And that brought togetherness more so than us here, I think, would be one of those thoughts. It's hard to break that, who we are. Our culture's ingrained in us.
It is.
Yeah.
John, as we close, What do you love about Jesus?
Everything, especially this topic and I think right now I'd have to say that he's been so good to us over our lives. My wife and I have been married 50 years. It seems like about 3.
Aww.
Yeah.
That's sweet.
But, and he's been so good to us in ways that I still don't even know. I mean, from day to day, I realize again, maybe something 30 years ago comes to my mind. I think, oh, yes, God, you were good to us. I would fly to islands on little pedal jumper planes in the monsoon season, the planes jumping and bouncing. I don't know where I'm going. I don't know the language. I'd be speaking at schools of all Buddhist kids, totally not for Christianity. Mm-hmm. And so it's just a total matter of trust. You don't know where you're at. You don't know where you're going. You don't know whether this plane's going down or staying up. 7,000 different islands off of Korea. And so the element of trust is just always there. And God's been so good to us beyond what we can measure. His blessings and guidance have been good to us.
Amen. Well, John, thank you for sharing with us. And if you see John around, he is willing to talk with anybody, and many of you have already met him. So if you have questions about his story, and if you really want to talk to the smart one, talk to his wife, Linda.
Amen.
She's the one that really directs things.
Yeah,
but
she's the standard of the base for me.
She is. She's amazing.
Yeah.
But we're so grateful that you're here. And thank you for sharing a little bit with us. I hope these thoughts have kind of stirred you in your mind and thinking about how can I trust God even more today. With the blessing of the week, it's the way we close every week. Miss Rachel has the blessing of the week for us. So Rachel, close us out.
Well, Daniel just asked me like an hour ago. So I'm just going to summarize what we've talked about the last couple weeks in our Wednesday night youth group. I work pretty much with the middle schoolers. So we did a very short series, a little 2-week series on things Jesus didn't say. And the first one was Jesus never said you had to be perfect to come to him. So people will use this phrase a lot, come as you are. And that is a true thing. God just wants you to come as you are. But our second week was God never said, I just want you to be happy. As long as you're happy, I'm happy. We hear that a lot in our own culture, in this Western culture. As long as you're happy, I'm happy. And that can kind of we can kind of see that in the church as well. Well, as long as you're happy, I'm happy. And that's a very disappointing thing to hear, because you should come as you are, but you should never stay there. If you think that Jesus thinks that you're perfect just the way you are, then you're wrong. He cares a lot more about your holiness than he does about your happiness.
Amen.
He never said, if you follow me, your life is going to be easy and perfect and you're going to have all the things you want. And if you just manifest your blessings, then I'll just rain them down on you. Like, that's not a thing. Jesus says, in this world you will have trouble, but take heart, I have overcome the world. He calls us to be holy over and over again. 1 Peter 1:14-16. As obedient children, do not conform to the evil desires you had when you lived in ignorance. But just as he who called you is holy, so be holy in all you do. For it is written, be holy because I am holy. And we have this catchphrase, the student ministry. Our name is the Arise Student Ministry, and I didn't pick that name, but I like it. The whole thing is like that we want students to arise, to follow Jesus, and become like him. You follow Jesus, and you come as you are, but you don't stay that way. You are continuing to grow in him.
Yeah.
And so, come as you are. Don't stay there, and pursue holiness over happiness.
Great thoughts. It's beautiful.
Proverbs, trust in the Lord with all your heart.
Yeah.
And lean not on your own understanding. In all your ways acknowledge him.
Yeah.
Trusting.
It's beautiful. Well, thank you both for being here today. Thank you for joining us this week on the Ripple Effect podcast. We can't wait to see you next week with a special edition podcast, which will be coming to you from Arizona. So stay tuned for that, but we can't wait to see you next week here. We love you all. Have a great week.